Hey folks, it's Don. I'm here on a beautiful Labor Day 2024 to show you around Gallagher Fen State Natural Area. And stick around at the end of this episode for 2 bonus big tree segments. So let's go. At the start of the trail at Gallagher Fen, you basically walk through this kind of long rectangular woodlot, secondary forest with a lot of honeysuckle, bud hackberries, ashes, hickories, things like that. And so not anything too great to see initially. The trail's nice and flat, kind of on an upland here, but I will rejoin you as we get closer to the action down toward the fen. As I walked in here, I didn't mean to discount this initial walk. Sure, there's a lot of honeysuckle. There are a lot of big trees, actually. A lot of shagbark hickories, white oaks, bur oaks. I saw an impressively large elm tree. It looked like a slippery elm to me. A little bit too far off the trail to get close to. But, you know, it's not a bad walk after all. Here's our friend hackberry with that incredibly rough bark that I think is so interesting. But yeah, while there's a lot of honeysuckle lining this trail, there's a lot of big trees as well. Probably in the 100 to 200-year-old range. Some of these big old oaks. Lots of nice hickories. So it's a nice diversity. So let's keep going until we get closer to the fen. All right, I finished the kind of long straight walk to get to the prairie fen, sort of circular trail. But before we head into the fen proper, we're gonna go over here and take a look at what they call a pioneer cemetery. Little old cemetery that has some remnant stones and things over here. So let's go check that out. And then we'll head down into the fen proper and take a look. This is part of the property too that they actually maintain a little bit more park-like. Somebody comes in and mows in here. We are on the east side of Springfield, and so we're not too far away from civilization, so to speak. So I don't know if it's the park personnel or some local person that comes in to maintain this. So let's see what we have here. See some broken down stones here. Okay, those are essentially impossible to read there. So let's go see if we can see some ages here. Again, just too difficult to get some words and numbers off of. These are limestone slabs mostly. That one's John Piper. It looks like about 1918, I think. Some broken slabs. Yeah, a lot of these are pretty well degraded. Here's a more recent one though. It looks like this is one of the last persons to have been buried here. Well, no, that's not true. That's a dedication stone to the Tuttle family, Caleb Tuttle, his wife and son, from the late 1800s. So, yeah, the son died in 1851. The wife 1876, and he died in 1881. So yeah, he lived to be almost 80 or 80 or so. But his son unfortunately died at about what is that? Yeah, 16, something like that. So what else do we have here? That's a Tuttle also of that family name, so that may indicate that this was the Tuttle family cemetery. I don't know. Yep, that's another Tuttle. Died. It's really tough to see. 1819, maybe? Yeah, these are quite old stones. This one was a Tuttle who died in 1848. Okay. John Milton died 1863 on that one. So, yeah, this is a pretty old site, old family cemetery site. Let's take one last look at one more. That's a Williamson May. E. Williamson May, died 1861. So, it's pretty interesting. Now, what we have growing around here is a mixture of stuff. Black walnut, some bur oaks. These are bur oaks and red oaks. Here's just a northern red oak right here. All right, so well, let's continue on our journey to the Fen proper after our little Pioneer Cemetery visit. So I've walked a little distance from that Pioneer Cemetery out, sort of overlooking the fen aspect of this preserve. And what I'd like to do is just talk to you a little bit about what a fen is and how this preserve is, its geology a little bit. And then we'll take a walk through and see what there is to see here at Gallagher Fen. Okay, so first of all, you might see that I'm kind of on a little elevated site here. I've been walking a trail out from the Pioneer Cemetery. And up here, it's dry, okay? It's dry upland. And this is mostly, you know, this area there were glaciers here, okay, as late as 11,000 years ago. And most of this material that I've been walking on, we would call glacial till. Okay, gravel, soil, rocks, things that the glaciers moved around, plowed around, left behind when they melted. And so a lot of this part of Ohio was glacial, has a glacial history, including this area. Okay, so this is a relatively flat upland area. It's dry as well. Okay, that's very well drained. That glacial till is very well drained, and it can be very deep, filled in ancient valleys, for example. But occasionally you have these sorts of drop-offs like this. Okay, now if you look out in front of me, that spot below me, which is a lot wetter, is about 20 feet, 30 feet below where I'm standing. And that's where water will seep out of this glacial till as spring water. Okay, so as a reminder, a fen is a groundwater fed wetland. Okay, they tend to be calcareous, neutral or slightly alkaline waters. Okay, and really common in areas with a glacial history. All right, so as I see from up here, I see a lot of vegetation that is associated with wetlands down there, which we'll get up close and personal to soon. But this is also called a prairie fen because in some of the more open, drier areas or these upland areas, you get some prairie-associated species as well. So they call this area is considered to be a prairie fen, and one of the finer examples of a prairie fen in Ohio at this point. All right, so that's just a little bit about this preserve, and this area where I'm standing, I can see, as I mentioned on the way in, there's a lot of honeysuckle in the understory of this forest, which is actually a quite nice forest. But in this area, it has been cleared out substantially. So you can see that there's honeysuckle in the background right there, but out in these directions, it's been largely cleared and allowing native vegetation to come back and recover. This area has been a preserve for a couple of decades, I believe, if not longer. And again, it's just not far out of Springfield, Ohio, so these kinds of places are special when they preserve such interesting things close to such a large urban population. So, all right, let's just take a walk back now, meander, and for a little way, and tell you what I'm seeing, and then we'll drop down into the fen proper, and I'll see what we can see down there. All right, so a lot of these trees, this is almost a prairie savanna style setting here, with widely spaced oak trees with herbs and grasses in the understory. It's what we would call a prairie savanna, and we see white oaks. Here's a white oak. Okay, a grayish, somewhat blocky, but kind of flaky bark. But out in the distance there, with the blockier looking bark, more channeled and furrowed, are bur oaks. So a mixture of both of these are scattered throughout here. And those are very classic trees of prairie savanna. White oaks and bur oaks. But there are a lot of hickories in this vicinity too. Okay, in front of me, this looks to be a pignut hickory, this tree. But there, right over here, is a shagbark hickory. Let's take a look at that. We've seen that many times on our walks. All right, and that's one of the more obvious trees out there in nature. So this is a real pleasant walk. It's a pleasant day. We have been in a major heat wave in Ohio, like a lot of the nation. It was about 98 degrees here 2 days ago. Today it was in the 60s overnight, and it's probably in the low 70s right now, I think. So it's absolutely refreshing out here right now. Dry, not humid. The trails here are very wide. You can see through here they're actually mowed. This would be a good spot to do trail running as well, which I like to do. And it's nice, wide, flat trails and not too many roots and rocks like some of the places I run. So this is a real pleasant trail. It's probably, all told, you could do a hike of around 2 miles here, linking together all these little loops. There's a fen loop, there's the long trail to get in here in the first place. So quite pleasant. I see a lot of birds flying too fast for me to try to identify. But it's really nice. Okay, the goldenrods are starting to bloom. Okay, there is Ohio goldenrod in here, which is a rare species and likes to live in fen-like habitats. So here's just an up close on goldenrod. I'm not going to worry about what species that is. We have a lot of species of goldenrods in Ohio. And so anyhow, that'll give you a feel of this little upland trail and the prairie savanna kind of aspect to it. And then I'll go find the trail where we're going to drop down into the fen proper. Got a beautiful red spotted purple butterfly here that's joining me on the walk. That looks like a really fresh one. It's very clean and bright. It's not tattered at all. It's cool. It's trying to warm up, and it's not running away too much because it's kind of cool out today. But that's the red spotted purple, or also called a white admiral butterfly. And it's been fluttering around out here nectaring and just trying to warm up. So we're just here to say hi, and then we'll get out of here. Okay. So I walked to the west side of that Pioneer Cemetery now, down this trail a little farther, till you get near these wooden stairs here, and they lead you down to the fen proper, so you can see the fen. Now, again, I talked about fens being spring water fed wetlands. It's been super dry. It's been a drought, so I don't expect this fen to be particularly wet, overly wet. But we'll see some water, I'm sure, but we'll see plenty of wetland associated plants as well. So here's how you descend. This will give you another view of the landscape, the geomorphology over here. There's a nice bur oak right in front of us. Bur oaks and white oaks all throughout here. Okay, I have a couple I see in the distance. I have a couple folks here as well, not many. I tend to like to do these walks when nobody's out. I came out pretty early. But, you know, the fact that people are here is a good thing. So, nice wide stairs. Again, there's the embankment from the upland, the savanna. This would all be considered sort of savanna. And then we'll get down here into the wetland. Right off the bat, I'm seeing some things associated with wet soils. So these are the seed heads of Joe Pye weed. All right, so these would be kind of a dull pink flower, and these are the seeds of Joe Pye weed. Okay, that's a common wetland associate. And out in front of me is a really common one I've seen pointed out probably some of my earliest videos last year. This is jewelweed, Impatiens capensis. Okay, these orange flowers. Hummingbirds love these flowers, these tubular flowers. Okay, this is also called touch-me-not because they make seed pods that are explosive when you touch them. So let me try to catch that on camera. Okay, here's how I'm going to pick one. There's what the seed pod looks like. And if this is at the right stage of ripeness, it'll just kind of explode. Yeah, kind of. But it's really interesting. It's sort of like a spring-loaded mechanism. As this seed pod develops, it has this tissue that more or less grows in a kind of a coiled fashion, so that when the seed pod fattens, gets the right stage of ripeness, you just need to touch it, or the wind blows, or something runs into it, and then it shoots the seeds. It can shoot them out several feet out from where they were produced. So it's a seed dispersal mechanism. So, you know, this plant was, you know, generated loads of fun as a kid, for me at least, and at least my weird friends. And also the thing about this is it's a very succulent kind of plant in terms of it's not tough at all. It's very soft, very juicy, and you can smash it up and use the sap that you get to soothe itches, things like that. So it's legendary for being able to treat poison ivy, for example. So it's all through here. It's in peak bloom right now. It's beautiful. And so that's touch-me-not, Impatiens capensis. Okay, now we're on a boardwalk. It's just absolutely lined by this stuff. Beautiful. I can feel the seeds shooting off everywhere. Oh, here's a beautiful plant, and one that I really like, and is associated with wetlands. This is a thistle. You might be able to detect that. It's a spiky plant. This one is not particularly spiky, actually, for thistles. And the one thing about it, you see these beautiful lavender blooms. The base of that has a really interesting texture, and it's sticky. That's one of the identifying features of this plant. And this is swamp thistle. Strongly divided leaves. Okay, this one has a little bit of powdery mildew on it, I see, which is a pathogen, but it's not a terrible pathogen. But that's a beautiful native thistle. There are non-native thistles. This one belongs here. And that stickiness is a feature that you use to identify it. Swamp thistle. Oh, I see a lot of it up ahead. Yeah, beautiful. This is a really good time to visit Fens. Late summer. I'm here on Labor Day, as I've said. And so this is a good time. It's said that fen vegetation tends to peak later than prairie vegetation. So Where prairies, typical tall grass prairies, might have been in their peak about a month ago, fens are still in really nice shape right now. Okay, so here's more swamp thistle, some goldenrods, jewelweed. Oh, here's great blue lobelia joining us as well. Okay, adding some blue to the mix. And then we have boneset, this white flower right here. That's called boneset. And that's a native wetland plant as well. Obviously, all these things are associated with wetlands. So it's just a nice mix of colors. We got whites, blues, lavenders, oranges, yellows. Nice. So I can see this soil is moist. All right, I see crayfish burrows, crayfish turrets. The wing stem is kind of at pink bloom as well. That yellow flower you see out in the distance there, I just saw a hummingbird fly by. So wing stem, kind of a raggedy looking flower a little bit. But again, it's called wing stem because on the stem, it has wings. I love it when plants are named for their characteristics like that. So, here you go about the water part. Well, these are spring fed, and there's still a lot of water coming out of that glacial till. So that would be probably pretty clean and pure water that's been filtered through that glacial till. It would tend to be on the neutral to alkaline side, very calcareous. I saw some fish swimming through there. Okay, you see the white, whitish gravel. Okay, it's limestone gravel. There might be some marl in there, M-A-R-L, which is a characteristic of fen wetlands, this white sort of clay rocky substance called marl you often see. And there's a glacial erratic, a big sandstone boulder over there. Excuse me, a granite boulder, which I've talked about a million times on my series, that the glaciers brought here from places like northern Michigan or Canada. Just kind of keep moving. Here's some of the Joe Pye weeds in an earlier stage of flowering, where you can still see the pinkish nature of their flowers. Maybe I'll get a little bit closer to one here shortly. I guess this is a little spot we can step out. Yeah, it's quite nice. There's where the little spring stream flows down the middle of the fen. This is the largest opening here. This is probably, this particular opening right here is probably, I don't know, 5 acres maybe? 3 to 5 acres. Now the bright yellow flowers you see out in the distance, I hope to get closer to as well. A lot of those are prairie dock. Really large basal leaves with a flowering stem, and they're just peeking out there. So those will grow right out in the open of dry prairies as well. But you can see they're practically growing in the water out in the middle of this fen. Just a beautiful shot. If you come here in the winter, which I have, you would think a site like this would be pretty, you know, just pretty plain and dead looking. Yeah, but it's really interesting still, right? You have the winter colors of all this foliage, this vegetation, the skeletons of the trees surrounding you. You have that stream coming down the middle, and it's beautiful any time of the year. You just have to change your aesthetic. Okay, so let's, I think I'll pause filming for the moment till I get up to some interesting features. I also see goldfinches out there visiting the prairie dock. Very bright yellow and black birds. Hopefully we'll get close to them as well. Okay, see you soon. Here's just another sweeping view of the fen. It's absolutely beautiful out here right now. just the perfect weather, the perfect day, perfect point in bloom. Lots of things still in bloom. I see ironweeds right in front of me, the darker purple flower. I have phlox. Okay, I have Virgin's Bower. Okay, these are the developing seed heads of Virgin's Bower, clematis. Some black-eyed Susans, agrimony. I see a few cattails out there. Of course, the thistles I talked about. Just a great day, perfect day. Really glad I decided to come out here today. All right, let's keep moving. This is essentially the spot where the water emerges out of the glacial till. So here we are right at the base of that bank. I was walking on at the top of that initially, but this is really where the water's seeping out, collecting and forming this little stream. Okay, which I can see a fish actually in this tiny little stream right here. It's going up to the headwaters. And so it comes down and forms this, there's this one really interesting opening spot here. It's like a muddy flat, rocky, muddy flat, and nothing much grows in it. And I've noticed this before, I'm not entirely sure, just right in front of me of 20, 30 feet. Nothing much grows in it. I'm not sure why that is. What's different about that patch of earth right there? Certainly things grow around it just fine. So it's just interesting. It just might be too nutrient poor, just a pile of gravel perhaps, you know, wet gravel, and there's just nothing much to get out of that patch. I'm not entirely sure. I'm seeing out in front of me obedient plant blooming as well. I hope I can get close to that. It's the lavender flower out in front of me. Another beautiful you know, wetland associated plant. And so just a great spot, great day to be here. And we will keep moving. I'm now at the eastern end of the fen, and this is where you ascend back up onto the glacial till plain. But on the way, we'll take a look at something that gives bur oaks its name. So these are the acorns of a bur oak. Come down here where it's a little brighter. And if you take a look at the fringes along the edges of the cap of this acorn, you can see it's fringy, right? It looks like a burr, like a cockle burr, right? It kind of burrs, it gets stuck in your dog's coat. That's characteristic of a bur oak acorn. Now this isn't a particularly big one. Bur oaks make the largest acorns of any oak species in the world. And they can be the size of a golf ball. And I found them that size. I'll look for them along the way here. But that's a bur oak acorn. Very characteristic of prairie savannas. And it's sort of the Midwestern oak. So I see them scattered along the stairs here. So we'll head up and see what we can see up here. Here's probably some of the parents of those oaks. There's a bur oak with that very channeled, furrowed bark. There's another one. Okay. There's the a really dramatic bur oak cap. Okay, with the acorns gone. Squirrel got that one. Okay, and we're back on top again. So here's just another nice overlook of where we've been. Lots of bur oaks in front of me. There's that wide open patch. Here's where the water largely comes out, starts to form the stream. Just an absolutely pleasant walk. Just outside of Springfield, Ohio. And I think I'll end it there. So, I hope you enjoyed this visit to Gallagher Fen. If I have the time, I'm going to try to hit 2 more sites, 2 historic trees that you can find in this area before I conclude this episode. So, see you in a minute. I'm along Redmond Road, east of Springfield, just a few miles away from Gallagher Fen, to visit this rather obscure tree that it's easy to pass, but once you see it, it's hard to pass up. So let's take a look at what we have here. So this tree has an interesting history. I guess around 1976 there was a old tree search where every county was expected to, I think, identify what they thought to be their oldest tree. All right, so this is the Horizon 76 committee. Recognized this tree, which is a chinkapin oak, Quercus muhlenbergii, as over 300 years old and the oldest living tree in Clark County in the bicentennial year. So that was October 1976 that was registered. I can tell you that this tree is older than 300 for certain. But second, it may not really be the oldest tree in the whole county, but it's an impressive one that was easy to find, that's for sure. Now it's grown in here. This isn't really a park. You have to sneak your way, not sneak, but you have to crawl your way in here. It's kind of, there's some trash and stuff. But this is it. Okay, it's a massive chinkapin oak. And it's not very tall. I think it's thought to be about 75 feet tall, or maybe not even that tall. But it has a massive trunk. I don't know if getting myself in the frame here is going to give you a feel for that or not, but I've measured this tree and I can't frankly remember what it is, so I'm going to measure it again and I will let you know before we leave. But it has these massive arching branches that are largely perpendicular to the ground, and that kind of tells you that this tree has grown in the open for quite a bit of its life. So not too tall, very wide spreading arching branches, and which is characteristic of how a tree grows when it's in the open without competition around it. It would generally be much taller and straighter, and its lower branches would be a lot fewer. Okay, it prioritized growth in height rather than spread. So it's a really unique tree. Right now it's very obscured. You can drive right by this on the street out there and miss it. It's surrounded by honeysuckle and such, so it really needs some care. In fact, I might see if I can help do something about that actually, but it's really a massive tree. I don't know how they decided that this tree was 300 years old, but I can almost guarantee you this tree is older than that. Chinkapin oaks are not a particularly fast-growing species. They're in the white oak group. This tree is probably more like 500 years old, if you ask me, 400 to 500, based on this girth. So in Greene County, we have some 600-year-old oak trees, for example, so white oaks. So I'm going to get a measurement on this and I'll talk about it, but we're going to visit one other big tree too while we're in this particular area. So there you go. That was designated as Clark County, Ohio's oldest living tree in 1976, and here it is in 2024. It's still living, looks quite good, has a good canopy. There's been a little bit of pruning on this thing, some maintenance, but I see no reason that tree won't last hundreds of more years if people leave it alone. Well, I just put my trusty tape around that tree. Turned out to be 72 inches in diameter, 6 feet. It's a pretty big tree, definitely more than 300 years old if it's a chinkapin oak, probably more like 500. So there you have it, Clark County's oldest living tree. Folks, I'm on the east side of Springfield, and I'm at near the baseball stadium of Wittenberg University Tigers, and it's a public park as well. And so I'm walking across the top of a levee that helps protect these areas, structures like that, from potential flooding by Buck Creek, which runs a little bit out there in the distance. And in this floodplain, some interesting plantings, educational plantings. I see prairie blocks planted in different mixes of vegetation, and so that's kind of cool. I see Indian grass and snake root and so forth. I see a bunch of obedient plant. And this is a public park. It has a little interpretive trail. You see some signage, birdhouses, and so forth. So this would be an interesting little study site. I think it's probably used by schools and maybe the university to compare and contrast these blocks of vegetation. They have some little educational displays and so forth. So now that's interesting. But I'm here to take an up-close look at that tree in front of us. It's gotten kind of windy. This tree is an eastern cottonwood. And cottonwoods can get to be giant, real giants. So some of our largest trees in diameter in the east are cottonwoods. And this is a big one. It's not the biggest, but it's a nice one. And it's really out here in the open and easy to see. So I thought we would finish out this episode filmed mostly around the eastern side of Springfield, Ohio with this tree. So let's take a look. Now this tree is not as large as the chinkapin oak I just showed you, but it's still impressive. And it's kind of set out here for people to enjoy it. They've built a little deck around it so we can get up close to it. So this is a public park. Picnic tables. There's a bike trail, walking trail that runs along Buck Creek there. But let's take a look at this giant. So, from a distance, it's hard to appreciate how large some of these trees are. You really have to get up close and personal to them. So I'll put my tape around this thing shortly just to confirm its size. But it's a nice one. It's in great shape. Out here in the open, its canopy is perfect. You see the thick furrowed bark of eastern cottonwood. Okay, that kind of bark is quite similar actually to a bur oak bark. So that's a hefty tree. So let me get my tape out and I'll put a tape around it. So I'm going to put a tape around the tree. You put a tape around the tree at about 4.5 feet off the ground. That's the standard place you would measure the diameter of a tree. This deck has me about 2 feet off the ground already. So I'm going to go about 2 feet up or so, 2.5 feet up, and see how big this thing is. Let's see. I identified the spot right here. I can hook the tape. And let's go. All right, I went a little high, but it's about 76 inches, 6.5 feet around. So that's a pretty impressive specimen. Cottonwoods grow pretty quickly, so that's not necessarily the oldest tree in the world. It's probably 100 years old, or maybe a little more than that, 150. But there you have it, 6.5 foot tree right here for all to see, eastern cottonwood. So there you have it, a nearly 6.5 foot diameter eastern cottonwood. And I guess I lied when I first walked up to the tree. I didn't think it'd be larger than that chinkapin oak we just saw, but indeed it was. So with that, I'm going to sign off on this episode of The Naturalist. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.